For our appetizer tonight, we want to introduce directors Julie Ha and Eugene Yi of a film called Free Chol Soo Lee, depicting the fight for justice by a Korean immigrant who was falsely convicted of murder. This film will be showing at the Sacramento Asian Pacific Film Festival on May 22nd.
Nichi Bei reporter Tomo Hirai recently chatted with Julie Ha and Eugene Yi, as well as community activists Ranko Yamada, David Kakishiba, and Peggy Saika, to discuss their film about Chol Soo Lee and the advocates behind the first national Pan-Asian movement in the country.
When I was 18 years old, I did an internship at the Korea Times English edition, edited and founded by K.W. Lee, the journalist in our film. And it was upon meeting him that I found out about the Chol Soo Lee case. He had written a series of stories that helped spur this movement to free a wrongfully convicted Korean man from prison. I couldn't get the Chol Soo Lee story out of my mind. And that's because almost a year earlier, Chol Soo Lee had died at the age of 62. I had attended the funeral to write an obituary, and also really just to see K.W. Lee, because I was worried about him. I know it was a deeply painful loss for him, and he never expected to outlive Chol Soo Lee. But it was really, looking back, it feels like it was at that funeral where the seeds of the idea to make a film were really planted, although, we didn't know it at the time. When Eugene mentioned making a film together, I just remember saying like, well, somebody needs to make a film about the Chol Soo Lee story. And so Eugene and I just decided we would do that. We would dig in and excavate the story. We both recognized it was just too important for it to be forgotten, and it could have so much impact within our community and just really for everyone, not just within our community, for everyone.
I'm eternally grateful that Julie said yes at that point to this pitch. But the thing I think I did know at the time, and why I thought Julie would be a wonderful person to work with, was not just because of our shared sensibility or our shared work history, but just her connection to the story and her passion for it. I knew were just there and were going to be so important to get us through this entire process, which has taken 6 years for us to finish, which ends up being kind of an interesting rhyme with the movement itself, since the movement to free him also took about 6 years.
Gosh, so many tie-ins to Sacramento. First of all, with K.W. Lee, he was chief investigative reporter for the Sacramento Union at the time. This story, and Chol Soo Lee was arrested in San Francisco for this murder. And yet, so that was outside of KW's beat. When he found out about this case, he felt very strongly about it, even worked on his own time. Jeff Adachi and David Kakishiba and others who are part of the movement. They provided this youthful energy, this idealism.
I first heard about the case from Peggy. It was in the summer of '78. She was in Sacramento, and I was home for the summer from my first year at Berkeley. And she told me about the Chol Soo Lee. So I was telling Jeff about this case and what Peggy was saying. And he says, he says, shit, let's go see this K.W. Lee guy.
So there are a lot of Sacramento ties. We should mention also Grace Kim and J.U., the older members of the movement.
There happened to be this vibrant Korean immigrant community in Sacramento as well, led by some of the people that Julie mentioned. J.U., who was a law student at the time, Grace Kim and Luke Kim. Grace Kim was a teacher. Luke Kim was a Dr. Luke Kim, I should say, as a psychiatrist. And they were people who were not only active leaders in the Korean community, immigrant community there, they were very politically engaged. I mean, a lot of these immigrants were anti-communist because they had come from Korea and had experienced just sort of everything that happened in Korea during the war and afterwards, while many of the younger Asian American activists were inspired by Maoist or other kind of very left-wing thoughts. So the fact that they were able to work together on this case, I think, it just presents a really interesting case study in terms of how an Asian America that is inclusive and can include everybody along that spectrum can really exist.
And when this Chol Soo Lee situation came along and I began hunting for an attorney who wouldn't give, no attorneys would give me the time of day. And that just kind of fueled this idea that I should go to law school and become an attorney.
The first time he called me, I remember, you're getting these collect calls and I'm like going, oh my God, it's Chol Soo, It would always be in the middle of the night for me because, he's like waiting for, in line to be able to use the phone and stuff. And so he'd always laugh. He goes, I can't believe I call you. It's 3 a.m., in the morning, and you just answer the phone and it's like, hi, He'd always call me though. But it's because he would have been waiting hours, to use the phone. And then I'm 3 hours ahead in New York. So it'd always be about 3 or 4 in the morning. He gave us an enormous opportunity to band together and do something really good. And that's what Chol Soo gave us.
And for the fact that Asians came together to support Chol Soo is kind of breaking some taboos. I mean, my mom and dad is going like, he guilty.
We didn't have a good plan for him, a reentry plan and support that that you need. I just think that that's really was more immaturity, I think, on our part and the movement's part too. We fought for his release. That happened, but we didn't create in the deepest way how he needed us more once he got released. Despite everything, he was still fighting and surviving. So I really admired him for that and never stopped. He was at his core an incredibly loving person, generous, loving, caring, at his core. That's who he was. He taught me so much. I loved him a lot. I think you could tell.
Yeah.
I loved him a lot. I still do.
But being able to tell the story was a way that I hope, can not only connect this moment to this history of resistance and this history of Asian Americans fighting, but to maybe inspire and push along even more what's going on.
K.W. Lee has said, people without a history are hollow. And I think for Eugene and myself, sharing this story so that especially Asian Americans know that this is part of their history, in terms of this victim of racial profiling, this immigrant Korean journalist who rooted out this injustice and told people about it. This movement of resistance led by odd combination of Korean immigrants and third generation Asian American activists. Like, this is part of our history. This happened. This is the truth. In our film, you can actually visualize what the movement sounded like, what it looked like once people are armed with this history. Hopefully it'll make Asian Americans think about what our roles are in creating a more just society. There could be just a real legacy for the Chol Soo Lee case even today.